Well, good morning. Tommy G, middle-aged millennial, coming to you from the Gold Coast studio. And we have Matty Attanasio joining us in just a moment, because it's Physiology Thursdays, I guess you could call it. And I'm kind of sitting down these days. And it's interesting because we do a lot of sitting down. You notice this is actually the second time I've sat down to do a video. I gotta tell you, I get a bit antsy sitting down for a little bit too long, and I want to get up and move around and stuff a bit, but I'm just trying out a different format here. I was building up my arms quite nicely, holding up as you would know, the phone quite often. But we do a lot of sitting down, especially if you've been in an office type environment. And we are not made for sitting down for so long. I mean, before the corporate industry thing started, where they put us into these, white box sweatshops, basically, or we're sitting in our cars half the time, we were actually active. So if you look at the blue zones, for example, around the world, Dan Buettner's book, if you want to check it out, or I think it's on Audibles as well, from Amazon, so you can listen to it. But they are constantly active through the day, and so you want to be either you've got the up-down desks where you're standing up and sitting down about an hour each time. You don't want too much of either, because you'll get some lower back issues, perhaps for different reasons if you're standing up for too long. But if you're moving around and you're active, that's the best way, right? But anything's better than just sitting down all day, which they're now starting to call like the new smoking, where smoking was an issue, that sitting down is now becoming the big, unhealthy exercise, or not lack of exercise that we do every day. So keeping active throughout your day, and not even just doing the workout in the morning and then saying, right, cool, I'm done for the day, and maybe you burnt off some calories and you're holding weight, but really physiologically you're still doing yourself a lot of harm just sitting down all day. So we've got Matty coming on. We're going to be keeping the time today because I'm actually going to have to give it a hard stop at the top of the hour, and I'm actually going to check if Matty is around. I don't see him yet. And I actually bought the other phone. This is the one that did not work that well, to see if he's actually still trying to go on my profile page. No, we've got someone, and it might be Matty, and it's not yet. Okay, let's switch that on. He should be pretty close. Checking out who we got online. No, he's not there yet. I'm going to ping him. Hey Matt, we are on the middle-aged millennial page. You might have forgotten. The other good thing too is that we are going to be hitting the gym today. So we've got Matty in the gym, and to stay on topic and on message, it's going to be about sitting down all day and the sort of issues that start to develop, and perhaps some good exercises for keeping that sort of mid-core area mobile. So I've got someone that's busy trying to make me a coffee at the moment, and they're going to need some instructions on how to use the coffee machine. So let me read the rest of it. How do I get the coffee to come out the grinding part? There's a button that you push. And by the way, the coffee is Keon coffee, I don't mind saying, which is Ben Greenfield's, like medium roast, best for chlorogenic acid, which is the antioxidant. And so, as I put my attention to my right, so I'm not ignoring you, the second button, so you put it in the grinding part. You don't have to put it in the grinding part. You just have to put so press, no. So yeah, put that little thing. That filter goes in the handle, in the big handle thing, and then you're going to sit that in that grinder and then you push. There's a little button. And you compress, and then you do a second one and compress, then over, lock, the two water things. Done. We have a new barista in the house. Right, okay. So, I think we've got Matty on now. Let's have a look. And there he is. We're going to add Matt. Come on. Well, that was an interesting start. We talked about sitting down too much, it becoming the new smoking. And Matty, we've got some echo. Oh, it's a bummer because I know you've got the phone separate. Right, that's fine. So, what we will do is, I won't talk so much because you're going to have to be doing some actions in front of the phone. We'll fix that next time. Okay, he's thinking. He might have a microphone speaker, or he's going to put them on anyway. There we go.
We'll figure this out, or at least I can say.
Hey, we've got Peter Rouse in the house as well. Hey, Pete. Okay, so. There we go. All right. We got you, brother.
Up close.
Good. Up close and personal. Let's get it intimate. So I was just saying that, sitting down all day is becoming the new smoking, and hey Pete, how it is becoming a real issue now from a health perspective, and we are sitting down way too often, and people think that, and you and I have mentioned this before, just going to the gym in the morning, doing your 1 hour session, and then that's it for the rest of the day.
Right.
People need Bluetooth. That's an idea. I've actually got the Bluetooth ears. I might try again next time. They kind of gave me problems last time on the other phone. And Anne's joined as well. Welcome, Anne. In fact, she is a pain expert, so she can probably comment here as well.
That'd be awesome.
Kiddos. Yeah, obviously this is the running joke with the Hey Kids thing that you have going on with her. Anyway, so buddy, sitting down too often, we're going to be active during the day. The up-down desks kind of help, but we need to be seeing what we can do to kind of counteract some of the damage we may be doing for sitting down too long. Right? So is that building a core? Is it what is it we need to do to get these things stretched and active and awake and, counteract the issues that develop?
If you think about the position somebody's in when they sit, they're flexed at the knees, they're flexed at the hips, and flex just means the joint is bending.
Right.
They're also flexed at the trunk. Okay, so they're kind of, and they're hunched over. So everything, all the muscles in the front of their body, we call the flexor chain.
Right.
Yeah.
The neck is forward.
Oh, yeah.
Hands are like this. You're hunched over.
You look good doing that. You must practice that every day.
Yeah, it took me about 3 decades of doing this, actually.
Yeah. So
Right.
here's the thing. You have people who sit, and there's not one person, I don't think, in a corporate job that literally sits for 8 hours in a desk. They do get up, they do move around, but the problem is they're
lunch.
Yeah, but they're still there for probably 75 to 80% of the day sitting, right? So that leads to shortening of a lot of the muscles in the front of the body. The hamstrings, which is actually behind the body, but the hip flexors, the trunk muscles, everything gets shortened, and what happens is the muscles behind it get lengthened, right? And so you have this shortened and lengthened thing, and you go flexing into the coffee. So what we need to do is we need to learn how to sort of get some balance. We need to get some strength going in certain areas that are weak, and then we have to work on getting some more flexibility in the areas that are tight. Does that make sense? So, for example, if your hamstrings are tight because you sit a lot, well, you need to work on your hamstring flexibility. And because your hamstring is a 2-joint muscle, which means it attaches at the hip and the knee, okay, there's various ways you can work on stretching your hamstring. But then you have the hip flexor, and the hip flexor is a very, very demanding muscle, specifically the psoas, PSOAS.
Isn't that sort of like so the hip flexor is where? About kind of here?
Yeah. So if you bring your knee up to your hip, raise your knee up to your hip. Yeah, you just flexed your hip and your knee.
I just flexed the hip.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
So the thing is this: the hip flexors, specifically the psoas likes to do a lot if it can.
Where's the psoas? It's kind of inside there somewhere.
What it is,
like-
it's attached near the femur, up high in the femur, and it goes right through your pelvis into your lower back on the front side and laterally speaking. So when it's
Around here.
yeah, well, it's kind of.
Show me. Where is it?
Let's see. Let's go. Your psoas is like
Okay.
it's a muscle right in here. Like if you put your hand in your pocket
Right.
and you feel for that hip bone in the front.
Hang on.
Okay.
Wrong bone.
Yeah, wrong bone, of course. Only you, T.
Okay.
So sometimes if there's a hip bone that runs that you'll feel in the front portion of your hip, just to the left
Right.
of your belly button or the right, depending what you're using. If you
All right.
if you press hard enough and deep enough, you could feel the psoas. Sometimes it's very very tender, and it runs through your pelvis into your front of your lower back and on the side. And what happens is, the shorter it gets, the tendency is to put your back in a bad position. Okay?
Oh, man, that's an animal.
Well,
Okay.
it also has emotional ties and other things, but the problem is that the psoas muscle shortens and it causes a lot of problems. And then so that what happens is, if you have a shortened front portion of your hip, and your glutes, which is the back side, the opposite side, is lengthened, because when you bend your knee like this, bend your knee in your hip. See if you can see this. Let me see if I can see this. So when I go like this, when I do this motion, I'm flexing here, but I'm lengthening here. So there's a discrepancy a lot of times in the strength of a muscle on the front side and the back side, as well as the length of it and the tension of it. And so what happens is, over time, muscles can become weak and long, or even short. But then you also have the deep abdominal wall muscles. Those are the muscles that you can't see in the abdominal area.
Underneath. They're inside. Yeah.
Right. They're called the transverse abdominis. Those muscles are very much supportive structures, muscles of the pelvis and lumbar spine. The thing is it has nothing to do with the six-pack. But when you're in a flexed position, when I'm flexed forward, these muscles here shorten. Okay?
Right. Okay.
So now you have a discrepancy, because you're constantly slouched forward, and you have tightness in the front of you and lengthen in the back of you. All right? So short, tight muscles and weak muscles are not good. Yeah. So we have to balance it out. We also have to create better postural alignment. We have to create more muscle balance. We have to probably create more mobility, flexibility.
Right.
But here's what most people who have a lower back problem, a lot of times they don't engage their deep abdominal wall. It doesn't fire a lot of times at the right time. So, for example, because there's a delay.
What does firing mean?
Contracting. Like, if your deep abdominal wall does not contract at the right time, the pelvis can tilt.
Tilt?
Yeah. Depending on the structure of the person.
So you sort of like
that way?
Sort of thing?
Yeah, either way. Either way. Yeah. So depending on what muscles are tight and weak and which ones are long, we don't want to get into too much detail, because you talk about the external obliques, internal obliques. The bottom line is this, is you have to say, okay, what can I do to relieve this back pain? And a lot of times it comes down to lengthening of your hip flexors, activation of the opposite muscle, which is your hip extensors. And those are typically the glute muscles, and then you have the glute medius, glute minimus, and the glute maximus. So maximus is the big, and then you have the medius more on the side. So the point is this: sitting a lot of times shuts down the activity of those muscles, and they become shortened and weak, and they don't work as well. There's no stability there. There's no strength there. So a lot of people, I want you to think about this. If this is your lower back, your lumbar region, let's just say, even though it's not visually speaking, but a lot of times people who have pain there, in my experience in helping them, I've had many people that I've helped, people with laminectomies where they've had the lower back surgery. What happens is They are very tight in the hip and the joints above or below. So typically speaking, a person who's tight in their hip joints, the hip joint is over here where you put your hand in a pocket, and that joint there, that's your hip joint. Okay, but they're also tight in their thoracic, which is like the mid back.
Middle back.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they're slouched and they're rounded. So those muscles up there and those structures, those joints, can get tight, and so can the hip. So can the hips. So you have the hip muscles, okay, the hip joint muscles, as well as the thoracic muscles and structures tight.
Right.
What's in between that is your lumbar. So if you lack motion at those hip points and those thoracic areas, it could lead to either excessive motion or pain in the lower back. Does that make sense? So so I'm going to just do a real quick thing here. If you were to take yourself from your feet to the top of your head, here's what most people, unfortunately, this is their typical structure and function. You typically want to have a good ankle range of motion. So think about this is your ankle. You want good ankle range of motion, okay? Your ankle, okay?
Yep.
You want good motion at the ankle. The next joint up is your knee. You want good stability at the knee. The next structure up is your hip. You want good motion or mobility at the hip. Then above that is your lumbar. You want good stability at the lumbar region. Stability, strength, maybe a little bit of 7 to 10 degrees of rotation. And then above the lumbar is your thoracic, which you should have good range of motion, good mobility. Okay?
Right.
And then above that is your cervical, which you should have. Okay, so here's the problem. And then your shoulders. A lot of people are very stiff in their shoulders. They don't have good range of motion. So my point is, each structure as it goes up the body should be mobile, stable, mobile, stable, mobile. Everybody's the opposite. A lot of people who sit are the opposite. Tight in their ankle structure, very unstable in their knee structure, very tight in their hips, very weak and too much motion at the lumbar, and then very tight at the thoracic. So they're the opposite. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so you have this roundedness and tightness in the body. And when the joint structures don't move properly, that puts a demand and a lot of compensations. So in terms of the lower back, what we want to do is we want to try to work on hip mobility, core stability, some thoracic mobility, and then of course, other areas as well. But we're short on our time. So initially speaking, we could go over some exercises or stretches or things that people can do when they're at their chair, maybe some activation stuff.
Yep. Okay. So we understand the problem, what's going on, and really it's like being in that same sort of position for too long. I think you just unplugged me.
No, we're good.
We're good?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, because we've got some echo back.
Is that better?
You there?
You're plugged in.
Wow. Maybe go in and out again?
Hold on one
That's
second.
weird.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Better?
Still echoing.
That's weird.
No good, huh?
Wow, what changed? Echo's back, yeah.
Do you think me at all?
Okay, so we're not wired. It sounds like you're not plugged in, for whatever reason.
What about now?
It sounds like it's coming
into your Apple phone, not your earphones.
How about now?
Now we're good.
Okay, good. I don't know why, but
Okay.
Gotta love it.
Okay. All right. So we understand the problem. What's the solution for someone who's sitting at the desk all day, or like me, used to do a shitload on flights, right?
Yeah.
Flying in corporate. So, I've got some customers that are like execs that are stuck in airplanes a lot of the time as well, hunched, or at their computer like this.
Yeah.
So give us some exercises they can use.
Okay, so we're gonna have to unplug. So I'll
Let's do that and I'll shut up,
yeah.
believe it or not.
All right, hold on one second.
See if we can get this. I'll do the best I can. The problem is it's probably echo. So, how about that? Is that good?
Yeah.
So I'm in a seated position here, and my back's rounded, and I'm at the desk and I'm all day. So these muscles are short, these are long, these are short, these are short. My upper back, middle back is short, is lengthened. So I need to do this. I need to get more balance. So one of the things I like to do is to teach people how to stretch their hip flexors out. But also, if you stretch your hip flexors, you have to now activate the opposite muscle, which is your hip extension. Okay, so let's do this. If we do a side view, now I'll tuck my shirt in so we can all see. You know, it looks kind of looks dorky. All right, so you have a pelvis. Now, just real quick.
See you, Pete.
Your pelvis here. When you sit a lot, this is what happens. Your pelvis does this. And then this is too extreme.
Yeah.
So we want to be neutral as much as we can. Now, if I want to stretch my hip flexors, what I can do is, while I'm in this position I'm feeling, I like to do a knee bend position, okay, with my pelvis nice and level from tall, not slouching, tall, and I
Control.
core strong and tight, stable. So like keep my pelvis level, right? My
Right.
knees in front of my hip. It's not at my hips, it's right here. Okay? And what I do is I draw my pelvis in, my downward muscle in, put my left hand on the inside of the knee, okay?
Yep.
I tighten the glute, this muscle here, okay?
Yep.
And then what I do is that as I'm stable and strong here and I'm stable and strong here, I shift my hips forward, not like this,
Right.
like that.
Right.
Right in here, okay?
Okay.
As I do this stretch, I shift forward, okay?
But you're staying locked at the hips.
Right. So I'm locked at the pelvis. So I'm
Pelvis.
not doing this nor that. I'm staying neutral, okay?
Right.
Level.
Yep.
And I shift forward. That stretches here while activating, you get the glutes fired. Now, it's something you have to actually activate on your own. We'll get to the activation of hips soon. But this stretches the hip flexion. Now, what you can do to add to this is you can grab and do this. Most people have a tough time, but this gets the front of your thigh as well.
Right.
You can hold on to something as well. So that's one thing you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also add some rotation, right? So for example, if I go like this, right, and shift forward,
And how many times would you do that one?
you want to probably hold it for like 20 to 30 seconds.
Hold it for 20, 30 seconds just once?
Well, yeah, how long, depends on how long the person has. You know, if they have a few minutes,
Okay.
they can do it for a few times, do right side, left side. And so,
Right. Got it.
and then once you reach up, then you can lean, keep your hips steady, lean, and you kind of get this whole
Side.
Okay.
So up here, shift forward, and then you can also lean to the side.
Right.
As long as the hips don't fall out, you're steady. Does that make sense?
Yep.
You stretch the hip flexion, okay? Obviously, you do both sides. Now, this is very general. Sometimes, you just catch the legs, so that muscle with the tight, okay? Some people are very flexible, right? That's just what both sides. Make full pelvis and shift forward. Like that, okay? Now,
Okay.
do that. Yeah, you want like this. Put one leg behind you. Now that's there. Support. While there. So go on like this. Not everybody has enough flexibility. That's the hip flexion. Very simple. I like to do that.
We're just losing a bit of audio.
The audio?
Yeah.
Can you hear
That's
me?
better.
Yeah, that's better there.
But you're going too far away, it's not picking it up.
All right, let's see if we can do this here.
Alright.
Okay. You can do a standing one too.
Yep.
What you do is you have your feet like this. Keep your pelvis neutral. A nice length, you can hold on to a wall if you need to. And again, you draw your abs in, tighten the glutes behind you, and then you shift your hips forward as you reach. And lean. Okay, so it looks like this. You shift your hips forward and you lean this way.
Right, hips forward.
Because my pelvis is level, not
Yeah.
arched or tucked,
Right.
when I shift forward, it lengthens here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. So a lot of people need to do that.
Right.
Now, this is another stretch I like to do. Some people can do it, some people can't. I like to do it. And sometimes if I'm sitting on my hip flexion inside as well. I'll put my hands behind something, and I both knees down like this. You can't see both knees on the ground. And what I'll do is I'll tighten my core, and I'll lean back and I'll shift my hips forward. Core tight, glutes tight.
But you're keeping your core tight.
Yeah, core has to be strong. If my core sticks out, my back arches. Does that make sense?
Right.
If
Okay.
I go like this, I can get your stomach out, my back tightens up and it's painful. So I keep it strong and stable. I go bracing, like you're going to get punched. And then you switch the glutes, and then you shift your hips forward and back. Once you're on the back pain, the pelvis is neutral, you'll get a really good stretch in your hip flexion and quad. Okay?
Yeah.
So, now, the hip flexors are, that's a great exercise to do. Stretch them out for 20 to 30 seconds, a few times. Now, here's the thing. Once your hip flexors are now at a new length, okay, you have to activate the opposite muscle, which is your glutes. Now, glutes specifically are this muscle here, okay? Also, your gluteus
Yep.
is muscles on the side. And there's numerous things we can do. I'm going to try to demonstrate something really, call it hip bridge. Let's try this. The wonders of figuring this out.
Okay.
So, in a bridge, your feet about probably 6 to 8 inches from your hips, okay? Your core is flat and stable, not sticking out, flat, okay? Brace. Now, what we do is we start at the feet. You push your heels into the ground, you squeeze your glutes, and you keep your core tight, stable. Hands at your side if you want, or like this. I'll do like this, so you can see. And then what I want to do is I want to drive through my heels and raise my hips up, like so, till I'm in a full extended hip position. If you know,
Angle towards the bridge.
it's called the bridge, yeah. Now what I'm doing is I'm activating here and getting we call it neural drive to these muscles, kind of like I'm trying to turn on the lights here, because they've been dimmed from sitting so long. So what happens is, once I'm strong, I squeeze the glutes, core is stable, I have no back pain. But if I shut off my stomach and my stomach sticks out, my back arches and I feel back pain.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you have to do like a core tight, squeeze your glutes, and then drive up and make sure you're in a nice straight line from your hips to your knees. See that?
Right.
Now look at this, watch. This is what you don't want. Hopefully you can still hear me. See how my back's huge space here?
Yeah, you can have them.
And then I push, I arch the back too much, you get back pain.
Yeah. Right.
So you want to have strong, stable core, drive through the heels,
Right.
but now, you can do that while you're at your job. You might look funny, but that's okay. You could do it on your lunch break. You could, listen, Watch this. Something as simple as this. If I'm doing this exercise right here, and some people, see how my ankles are? Some people can't do that. Some people have to do it. It's fine. What I like to do is, you could just work on just this exercise. Squeeze your glutes, be up tall, straight line, like this, arch, neutral. See the straight line here? Down. Squeeze your glutes, hips down. Squeeze your glutes if you don't want to get on the ground, right?
Right. Yeah.
Another way. Squeeze your glutes, back down. If you can do that, if you're concerned about your shoot or whatever, but you're
Right.
Or some of you can just do right there almost at your desk. I mean, if you don't have an issue with sitting down next to your chair and doing it. Is there anything you can do in your chair? I think it's the glute one. Isn't there, where you kind of like lift your ankle up onto your left knee or something,
oh, well that's
and you bend over to do your glute.
that's a stretch.
Or you're sitting in a chair. Yeah, that one.
Okay, but that's a hip stretch. That's different.
Right, okay.
If you go like this, you could cross your leg over like this.
Yep.
And you bring your torso, kind of hard to see.
Well, you're standing pretty straight in your back, right? You're not leaning down. You're not arching down. Right.
This motion is no good. I like to bring
No, right. Yeah.
pull lightly and then lean into it.
And pull. Right.
Cross spine.
Okay.
And then you can do this one too, right? You can
Right.
do this. If you have a desk, put your leg up,
Oh, yeah.
and you can do that. This stretches.
That's pretty cool.
See. Some people have difficulty. They
Right.
can't get their shin like this. They have to do this.
Yep.
But you use your hands for support to stretch
Yep.
the hip from this side out. Okay, so
Right.
this is another option. I also,
Okay.
and I know we only have about 5 or 6 minutes, but you could also,
Yeah.
if you're good enough, you can use your desk. Cross your leg over, squat down, and do this. Notice my spine is good position. It's not rounded and collapsed, right?
Right.
So this is a stretches the glutes out. And then also, you can also stretch this way on the ground. You put your leg like this.
Oh, yeah.
Drop your hip down,
Yeah.
like that. Can you
And
see?
then
That stretches the hips too.
right.
But typically when you do this is before you activate your hips. You're sort of doing a stretch, and then you're activating your hips, right?
Right. Yeah.
So typically you want to lengthen the muscles that are tight, and then you want to strengthen or activate the opposite muscle. So if my hip flexor is tight from sitting too much, I got to activate the glutes. Now, your hamstrings can be tight too. We have 3 minutes. You tell me what you want to do.
Hands.
Hammies?
Yep.
Okay. Well, hammies, there's numerous ways to do the hamstrings. See how my feet are 2 inches apart?
Yep.
Okay. You want to hinge your hip. That means your hips go back,
Yeah.
right? Both hands like this, and I take my hands and I go like this. Now, if you notice, my back is flat. I'm not like this.
Yeah.
So
Right.
start here, hands back, stick your butt out with your core tight and lean forward.
Yep.
Neutral head position, hips back, and it stretches you right here.
Right.
You could also do one at a time. How do you do that? You go here. Left leg bent, right leg straight, hips go back, and you get a really nice stretch here. Now, if you're feeling it at the calf or behind the knee, that's because your toe is up. Put your toe down, and it'll lessen that area and get it more here. If you want it more towards the calf, behind the knee, bring your toe up. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That's one that you could do. You could also do, sometimes I like to do on the supine, is I bring my leg up,
Right, supine means the lying down.
Yep. But I have to make sure the core is stable and strong. So
Okay.
pelvis is stable, core is strong.
Yep.
I bring my leg up as far as I can, hold it, and down, right?
Okay. All right.
That was, I know you got
That was huge.
We jam-packed a fair bit in there, Matty.
Say again?
We jam-packed
Packed a fair bit in there.
I guess.
Yeah, in true Matt style. Just wanted to give value. That was huge.
How about this? You ready?
So,
You ready? Let's see if I still get
yeah.
it. I'm going to show you what good flex. When I was a
Oh,
kickboxer,
cool.
we had to do crazy stuff. You ready?
Yeah.
See if I got the flexibility.
Oh, here you go.
Oh, dude.
Look at that.
Ouch. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Right.
There we go.
And, oh, yeah.
Quick going. Hey, who's
Right, okay.
I don't know how many execs are going to have tearing their pants like that, but
just having fun?
it's something to aim for,
All
right?
right.
Now,
Whoa.
it's important to know the person that you're training. What are their after assessment? You got to figure out where they're tight, where they're weak, right? You got to know all these things, and then you prescribe. I was just giving them basic things to do. That's all.
Okay.
Sweet. But I got to jump off because I got a hard minute to go. But
That's awesome. Great to get some more of that stuff. We're going to bring to people in the gym. I think it's great value. And yeah, we'll get our sound sorted too in between.
We could do core stability and strength next week if we want.
Awesome. Let's do that. That'd be fantastic. We'll get set up differently on the audio.
Yeah, it means I got to have one of those just these
Bluetooth.
Bluetooth. Okay.
Yeah, that was that should be mobile.
Yeah. Now that I'm
All right.
All right, buddy. Thanks for the heaps. Anybody wants to know more, you can speak to that man over there on the other screen. PM him directly. And PM me if you have any other questions with regards to a lot of stuff around personal health that I'm very focused on. But Matt forms part of that, especially when we get to the personal health side of the physical aspect.
yes.
Matt,
Any further words from you, brother?
You don't have to have back pain. You can fix it. You just have to become aware of the issue and then do the necessary daily things that your trainer or whoever you work with prescribes. And it can easily go away. I've had plenty of people that have had back pain. It's a lot less now. And it's about identifying your weaknesses and fixing them and then doing it daily.
Beautiful.
Cool?
All right, love your work, Matty. Thanks for hanging around in the gym, man. We'll see you again next week.
Yeah, we'll have even more better information.
Yay! All right.
Progress, not perfection. See you in the next one.
See ya.
Remember, enjoy life
Right here, right now. And with Matt Attanasio, going on the floor, shooting it out as we close out.
Bye.